this morning, one of the things that I've said is that I found my professional home in Syracuse. A lot of the experiences that have shaped my life, my performing, my academic studies, my career has kind of come together in this town that I really have no connection to. You know, my family's not from here. It's kind of a space that I found when I needed to figure out some paths in my life. And so I show up and I get a job at this community center, and my mom is here in the audience, and she's like, "You're doing all this studying, you need a job." You need a job. And so I get one at Syracuse Community Connection, and I'm getting connected and invited to things and kind of into the circle of influence, Evelyn, that you mentioned in your video. And I'm just kind of like taken by storm by the number of women that are in this community that are doing dynamic work. And once I finished dissertation and like careers, and my friends keep saying, "Well, Johanna, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?" And I just had to turn around and look and was like, well, I think I have a platform, and I want to use that platform to talk with women like yourselves, to tell your story, and not just be your titles, not just be who we think we see when we cut on the news or we see the headlines or when Wegmans is doing something fantastic, but we get to know you and the other women that are like you. And so I hope that is what Behind the Woman can do. And I thought it was important to show the faces of women doing this in Central New York. So this is kind of like my love story to Central New York, right? It really, really is, in a real, real way. So with that said, I'm gonna ask just a couple of questions, and then we're gonna let you all ask questions too, because I think it's really, really important that we give some time to the folks that show up to have their voices lifted. One of the things that I asked each of you on camera that we didn't necessarily highlight here in the video is, what is it that you think women in this community can do to address some of the challenges we have before us?
Well, I think we've just said it all, and that's supporting each other and mentoring each other. And Evelyn, she's a mentor to me. I see many people in the audience who have mentored me and made me into the woman I am today. And I tell everyone this story. I found myself in Syracuse. This was a very unlikely place. Like Johanna, I came here from the great state of Texas, the greatest state there is, and I did not know I did not know a soul, and so that was very scary. I work in a very stressful job. You might not see how much stress it causes, but I live my life on a constant deadline, and I'm constantly dealing with type A personalities, and I think to be able to have the support and the mentorship of people in this community has really helped me face the challenges that I've had to deal with, and I think that all of us can say that that helps us as we move forward.
And I think that because we do such an amazing job in this community of supporting each other and supporting women, we're given opportunities to be at the table, right? We find ourselves at the table around the boardroom table or around the executive committee table at our companies. And I think what we can do to help this community is to be at that table and sit there and have your voice be heard and feel like, man, I belong to be here. And I'm here for a reason. And if I'm gonna be at this table, you better believe I'm gonna show up. And I'm gonna make that voice heard, and I'm gonna absolutely be part of that conversation. And we have so many ideas and solutions and things to offer. And giving others the platform and giving our friends and the other women in our companies and the women in the community that we see and helping them feel comfortable. And as Evelyn said, really paving the way to make people understand that women are gonna be at this table and they're gonna sit there and they're absolutely gonna take that role and run with it.
It's funny because I think during our interview, Stephanie, I talked about, I'm on a board with yourself as well as Evelyn, and the meeting is like 8:30 in the morning, and despite today, I don't
It's
normally...
actually at 8 o'clock, Johanna. I know you show up at 8:30, but it's at 8.
You get my point?
Just for the record.
It's at 8, I knew that. And so, and so I walk in, and somehow at like 8:05 when I get there, there's always this one seat right at the head of the table, and I'm like, why why do they sit? It's like they know that I'm coming. But it's sitting right up front with the president of the board, and then Evelyn and Stephanie sit there, and I'm like, why am I always at this table? And kind of feeling a little intimidated. I'm a new board member, and, trying to figure my way through it. But it's not just using that as an analogy as my point, but sometimes when you do take that seat, it still takes time of like reaching out. And I know Evelyn and I have met to just kind of talk about, okay, I'm at the table. Is my voice important? Like, where should I insert my voice, and getting the confidence to just do that? And I just wanted to shout you all out for always leaving that seat open when I get there at 8:05, not 8:30. To just not only be a physical presence there, but like challenging me, even despite my assertiveness and willingness to like be on stage and do stuff like this. Sometimes when it comes into an environment where we as women aren't often the norm, that it's still, you still kind of take a minute to go like, okay, when's my time to just kind of jump in?
And that's why I normally, because I understand that feeling, and you may not, recognize it or even notice it. But when that happens to you in that meeting, I normally look at you and I go like this. Because that makes a big difference, because you're a room with a bunch of people, and it's kind of a little intimidating. So I try to just do that so it makes you give you that comfort level. Have you noticed that?
I have.
Okay, good.
I have.
Good.
I have.
So,
and I try to like sit in the seat and like own it, but I'm a little nervous, honestly.
So hopefully we help with that. So as far as addressing challenges, what I feel is, in order for us to be able to address challenges as women, in whatever capacity, it's important for us to be our best self. I think that's important. I think you can only help others if you're at your best. And I think being your best you, whatever that means to you, is very important. So I try to make sure that I'm at my best as far as being able to help others, feeling good about me and what I'm doing. And I think the other point I look at is also live by your value system. Thank you. Live by your value system and allow that to drive your behavior. And I'll share a story from many years ago. I also have a background in human resources, and I was working at human resources at one of the first companies after I graduated college. And that company actually at the time was going through a lot of downsizing and restructuring. And in human resources, I had to be able to literally lay people off and tell them that your job is no longer needed. And it was difficult because the way they were doing it was literally, you didn't do anything wrong. It was just a job restructuring. And I would have to go to these people who've been with the company for 25 plus years, look them in the face and say, unfortunately, your services are no longer needed. And they made me walk them to their office, watch them pack up their office, and walk them off campus. That's not Evelyn. I could not do that. I said, these people did not do anything wrong, and we're treating them as if they were thieves or doing something that was negative. So I didn't do that. I didn't facilitate my transactions that way. I allowed people to leave with dignity. And I knew that it was going to get to a point where the company was going to make me do that. So for me, that wasn't the right place. So I decided after the last situation where a gentleman looked at me, we were laying him off, and he looked at me and said, Evelyn, how do you sleep at night? I couldn't do that. So I knew for me, the way the company was transacting business went against my value system. So I found another job. And I employ people to really recognize who you are and don't allow anyone or anything or any company to dictate you as a person. Because for me, it's important for Evelyn to always be Evelyn. So that's why I feel like when we're addressing challenges, if we are our best self, and whatever, again, that best self is for you, you determine that monitor, then I think that will enable us to meet all challenges, overcome all obstacles, and do everything we can.
Absolutely. That's so poignant and important, because I think it is sometimes as women important for us to know that it's okay that this isn't a right fit. For us to just kind of be able to say, it's my time to walk away, it's my time to find something new, and embrace that as a change and transition in life. And sometimes it's hard, change is hard, and sometimes that means growing without the people who have been there with you. right? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, and I'm a woman of faith. My dad was a pastor, and we always say sometimes elevation requires isolation, separation. So you're not going to be with the people who you started with, and that's a good thing a lot of times because they don't grow with you. And so that's something that I've had to learn. Even moving to Syracuse, you know, this was a place I didn't know anyone, but when I tell you I have gained a family here, people who I know for a fact that will be in my life forever. And for me, that's a beautiful thing to be able to really do that in those connections and relationships.
I have such a little bit of a different story because I did grow up in this community. My family still lives here. I am Camillus, born and bred. I live in the city now. And my life, and I talked to Johanna a little bit about this, that I had a lot of regret because I didn't make the move, right? Anybody that grows up in this community, we suffer from a significant self-esteem problem here in Syracuse, right? We have such doubt about our city, we're so critical of it, and it was the moment you get out of school, like, let's get out of town. And I made the choice to stay, and for a variety of reasons. Met my husband, had a great position, fell in love with a company that absolutely met my values, and I made that choice to stay because in part of my family and the community that I had, but when I made that decision, it was, if I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna do everything I can to try and make this the best Syracuse it can be. How can I try and change that perception of the city? How can we try and serve the community in which we live? And I think that's critical wherever you are, and if you're leaving people behind or if you're holding on tight to the people that made you who you are, it's how can you be the best and create the best environment and absolutely take what you've learned and take that information and the platform in which you've been given and do everything you can to really invest in the people and the community.
Yeah, and I think you do that really well. When I'm at events, we end up at tables together. I will say Stephanie and I hadn't had coffee yet before we did our interview, but she's someone who I just see, and you're out in the community and you're loving it and vibrant, and you can really truly see how much you love your city and community.
I guess I come from a couple of different perspectives because I'm not originally from Syracuse. I'm actually from a town on Long Island called Amityville. So it's a little spooky, but I think I'm okay. But I actually came here for college. I came here as a freshman at Syracuse University, so I came alone by myself, you know, with my luggage and trying to meet my friends and make myself. When I think about it, I've been in Syracuse actually now longer than I was in Long Island. So I kind of feel like I have both perspectives, and I've seen the progression of Syracuse from where it was a very downtown was not really that vibrant and where it is now. So I think when I look at that and I realize that the importance of finding yourself, and I would say I found myself in Syracuse too, coming here at 18 years old, and I'm a PK also, growing up in church and, you know, having that value system and then trying to, you know, live those values and then be independent as well. But I think Syracuse offered a lot, and because I think I've seen the progression, I think we talked about this, I think it's enabled me to really value what we have and really come in and recognize that Syracuse really has grown a lot. We offer a lot more. I mean, now when I look at the fact that on weekends we have options of what we'd like to do.
There are multiple
I mean,
events
there are
going on at one
options.
time.
Right, that's a huge thing, so I think that's important.
It's funny, like I said, I'm not from here, but I totally agree, and I think I spoke about this with all of you, that finding a home here is a real feeling, even for like Behind the Woman. If I was living in a Chicago or New York or DC, I would have been going to someone else's Behind the Woman, not necessarily feeling like I had the opportunity to create something that could really serve a need, or it's harder to do that when you're inundated with so many people in a larger city. So I think I could attest to finding, like, you know, my professional, feeding my creative side, you know, and finding in this community enough of the support and people that are willing to kind of open the door and be there to help you kind of live out your dreams. It's really real and manifested here in this community. And I think us sitting on stage and you all being in the audience this morning kind of speaks to that in a very real way. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I do want to say this because I know a lot of people say, oh, you know, Syracuse, and they kind of, just like you were saying, the mentality was there. As an outsider coming here, this is the land of opportunities. There is so much to do here
Totally agree.
in terms of developing yourself professionally, personally. I mean, you know, the fact that you've started this project, a lot of people have started nonprofits. It just really is a land of opportunity. So make the most of your time here, definitely.
And so if we have some questions, we're going to open up at this time for women in the audience. Questions, comments.
I'd like to know how failure has influenced you.
Failure. Part of the reason I got to Syracuse is because I failed at something. Failure has been the greatest turning point. And I had went and defended my dissertation proposal. And that's just the hurdle and point in your writing process where your ideas and your concept, which I have been working on for like 6 years. And I thought I was ready to do it, and my committee was like, you're not ready yet. And I'm like, listen, I'm running out of student loans. I'm tired. I'm working like 3 jobs. Like, what do you mean it's not ready? And I was just like, you know what? Then I'm done. And because I have nothing left to give, my mama told me I gotta get a job. Listen, it's a lot of things going on. My life was transitioning, and it was at that moment that I kind of came to Syracuse and needed a space to just kind of like think through, kind of just like restart, hit the reset button. And I was working on an entrepreneurial venture. I'm not working on that venture anymore. And so one of the things that came to me in those months, I was job searching. Nobody would hire me. My mother kept saying, you need a job. And I'm just like, what is happening? And it was in that moment when it seems like the walls are literally caving in, that a friend talked about, like, you're just an opportunity away. And for me, and when I think about failure, I think the difference between me and a lot of other women is that I still had that support network to kind of fail up. And it didn't kind of cave in on me and make me feel like Johanna as a person wasn't capable. I just needed to find the right space. And so what I would say is like how failure has impacted my life. Like failure brought me to Syracuse. You know, and I had to find my way through that experience. But in that failure and my commitment to navigating that experience, and being fearless about it has brought us all here today.
I think for me, failure pushed me to success because I'm not supposed to be anchoring a newscast. I'm not even supposed to be on television, according to those who told me I was going to fail, who I wasn't going to succeed. But I think the fact that they told me that just gave me the ammunition that I needed to keep on pushing. And so I started, like I said, I started behind the scenes, and my boss at that time encouraged me to kind of stay in a position like that, but I knew I wanted to report the news. I love telling stories, and I love to tell stories that kind of change the narratives of communities. And so I said, you know what, I just have to keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. And I knew I wasn't gonna make a lot of money. My first job, I was making like maybe $16,000. Like I said, it wasn't good. And they expect you to look cute, have your hair done, wear cute clothes. So yeah, it was definitely a struggle, but I know, but it definitely pushed me to really achieve my dream, which if I had listened to everyone who said I was a failure, who said I wasn't gonna be good enough to achieve what I wanted to do, then I would still probably be where I am, but it pushed me to success. So I'm glad for those lessons in failure.
I think pretty similar story. Well, I shouldn't say that. Similar lesson. I was like Evelyn in high school. I was like Little Miss, you know, high honor roll, super striver person. And then I went to college, and I was like, ooh, boys, beer. And yeah, and college was an exercise in a social experiment for me. And since I was just back there, I went to Geneseo and I was just back there this weekend, and I was like, I don't really remember the academic buildings, but I remember that fraternity house. So when I graduated from college, I had no plan. I mean, it took me 4.5 years. I failed classes. I mean, I was a terrible student. And I had a good time, but I was not a great student. So when I graduated, I had no plan. And my first job in advertising came because one of my friends was a copywriter at a small agency, and he happened to be the bouncer at Coleman's. So that's how I met him. And so it led to my networking, thank you, lesson in networking, Coleman's. And so because of that, I struggled. I mean, I didn't have a good job. I was similar than you. I cleaned toilets, I scooped ice cream, I did anything I had to, and I still would today. I mean, no question about it. It doesn't matter what your title is, I will still do anything I need to do to take care of business. And I think that's the lesson for me that I learned, is that throughout my career, I've always had that philosophy. I live my life to serve in the world that I'm in. I serve my clients, I serve my employees, and I think it's because I failed and I had to figure out to just pull myself up and do whatever I had to do to take care of business, pay my bills, pay my student loans. And from that point forth, I always say to people, just work harder than everybody else. There's no silver bullet. Yeah.
Well, Stephanie, I'll say, and it's funny, I look back, I was a goody two-shoes, even in college. I spent Saturday nights at gospel choir rehearsal. I did. And it's funny, sometimes I look back now, I'm like, man, maybe I should have did a little something. But I think for me, I was one of those, always wanted to please my parents and make them proud of me. So and growing up in a Christian household, there were things that was associated with that. So I didn't have as good a time as you do, but I did enjoy myself, and I think we all have a different path. And I'm having a great time now, though, I will say. But I'll say, as far as the failure question, that obviously we all have had failures just as we've had successes, but I think the mentality associated when you have a failure is what has helped me, because I don't look at failure as a red light or a stop sign. I look at it more as a transition to move forward and to learn from that situation. So I really, try to make sure that when things don't go the way I want them to go, and I do like things to go the way I want them to go, but it doesn't always go like that. But I always try to make sure that I use it as a learning lesson to help me move forward. And I'll share, I had a mentor when I had just graduated college, and he said to me, Evelyn, there's never a right or wrong decision. Just whatever decision you make it work for you. So that's kind of what I've lived on.
Behind these women, right?